you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, and your team for coming. My question has to do with immigration decisions and the impact on Francophone immigration, and the presence of racism there was recently admitted by the federal government in its response to the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration in the other house, entitled Different Treatment in Recruitment and the Rate of Acceptance of Students Who Want to Go to Quebec and the Rest of Canada. The report mentions many situations of racism in the processing of files and explains a higher rate of refusal for Francophone Africans. Knowing that this is affecting Francophone immigration, what role will the Office of the Official Languages Commissioner play to deal with this systemic problem that exists at IRCC? And I have another question after that. The role of the Commissioner when it comes to this situation, well, it's related to the study that we've already carried out, is to make sure that in the future we come up with a Francophone immigration policy that is separate. The current policy is an Anglophone and Francophone policy at the same time. And from what we've seen is that we need to make some small changes with the immigration process that exists now. The only way to avoid some of the systemic problems you've raised is to have a program and policy that is separate, holistic, that deals with the issue of Francophone immigration separately from Anglophone immigration. Because what happens is that we usually use the same resources to do the job. And as a result, let me give you an example. In Africa, there's an office that deals with almost all applications for student visas. If you reduce the number of service points, what happens is that there's an issue of accessibility, an issue of fairness. So we must increase the service points. And this can be done if there's a separate policy. I always have difficulty with a policy that dominates right now. Looking at Immigration Canada's policy, they're just trying to make some artificial changes. Yes, we're going to look at the express entry. Yes, we're going to deal with direct entry for students. But the reality is that the federal machine is not there to truly support Francophone immigration, in my opinion. And I'm talking about the broader sense. We don't have the required staff. If we want to avoid the situation that you mentioned, we must set up a Francophone immigration policy that is separate for Francophone immigration. Because we have the impression that looking at the current system, Francophone immigration is lost. You don't have enough resources in place. There's something else. We don't have the mechanisms in the regions and that's why we have Francophones. That's the first thing we must do. If we want to recruit Francophones, you need to go there where they are. And if we have a limited number of service points, that would definitely have an impact on the selection of candidates. It will have an impact on the entire continuum of immigration. So it's important for us to think about the continuum, not only the selection process, but we have to think about receiving them, integration, international studies, permanent residents, temporary workers, and also retention. We could attract immigrants to our communities, but can we keep them there? Do we have the necessary infrastructure and services to keep them? Many witnesses appeared before several committees and clearly said that they are not necessarily well equipped to well receive immigrants. The answer, the very long answer to your question, is that we must come up with a separate policy. We've talked a lot about duality. I would like that there should be duality in immigration. Thank you very much for your question. Let me look at the issue of prejudice that is associated to people who take decisions when we talk about accepting or refusing candidates. And one of the problems that we seem to have is this famous prejudice. So how come within this policy can we reduce the impact of this bias or prejudice when it comes to accepting applicants for Francophone immigration from Africa? I think we need to look at the famous Shinak software. In the minister's response to the study, they said that they had to make sure whether in the software, the famous algorithm had some bias because lots of decisions are taken by this software. There's another important thing. Education within IRCC. Very often, when we identify an issue of systemic racism, for example, there's the issue of education that has to be done within an organization. We must recognize the fact that if we accept a limited number of Francophone immigrants compared to the others, let's ask the question, why? And I think we must ask that question within IRCC and look ourselves in the mirror and find out why we are dealing with the situation, which has been raised by many stakeholders. Thank you. Thank you very much.